Candyce Costa, and I own Hello Tech and Digital Business Women. And with both, I work with a small business that wanted to go digital as digital marketing and social media consultant. And we're going to talk about strategies that are going to help you to reach your audience. So my first question to you is, have you ever Googled yourself? If you're not, I strongly advise that you do, because it is your digital footprint. If you are not there, or if in the images you find your drunk selfie, I think you should change and be really careful about your digital footprint. So because how you manage your social media footprint is powered by you. You have the control and you manage your reputation on social media. So I actually do not have a drunk selfie on my footprint. Because nowadays, if you're selling your CV, your achievements and abilities, if you sell a product or you're consultant as a coach or any kind of products that you sell, even in e-commerce, like big brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, all of them is really, really thinking about personal branding, even though they are a brand. Because you have the power to make you who you are. So this is me, and I'm on LinkedIn 24/7. Why? Because LinkedIn for me is a professional business environment. I want to work all the time, all around the world. I have business in Australia, India, China, all Europe, America, Canada, and Latin America. So, powered by my social media, especially my LinkedIn. So, the big opportunity of social media is the channels. So, you can use Facebook, you can use, depending on your service and your product, you can use Facebook, you can use Twitter, LinkedIn, in different ways of sell yourself on the digital world. You need to have a strategy, and nowadays it's about content. It's how you sell yourself, what kind of voice you have on your social media. And the last one is your actions, so tactics that implement your strategy. And the tactics are really important because each digital channel has a different voice. On Facebook, people are more relaxed and friendly. On LinkedIn, people are more business. So you are networking with people like we are networking today here. So you're talking with people that has the same mindset, they have the same profile, and they want to know you and make business with you. Sorry, I forgot to say so you have in the previous slide. You can find me on LinkedIn, it's Candyce Costa, and if you have your mobiles, I would love that you get the mobiles from your handbags because we're going to do an activity in the end. Next. So, social media has to be daily work. So you have to work really hard to have a voice on social media. And it's difficult, but worth it. So I have one of the projects on my LinkedIn that in the 7 months, I started in February, and right now we already reached 500,000 engagements on social media, just LinkedIn. I'm not talking about Facebook or any other, okay? So for that, you have to have a clear objective. So what is your goal? What you're looking for? So you're looking to find your competitors and what they are doing and how they are engaging with their audience. You want a new product, so you reach and you find, you search the audience for you. So you find your goal. So as you clear with the goal, you create the strategy to find. And then you define your strategy. You knowing your goals, you create the path. And then usually nowadays, strongly advise using content for that. And the last one is develop your personal branding. Sometimes people think that, usually people tell me like, I don't want to be an influencer. And I say, yeah, but do you want to find a job? Do you want to go and progress in your career? You know, you want to, right now you're a manager, maybe you want to be a director one day. Doesn't matter because you're selling yourself. especially on LinkedIn. It's the digital CV, where you talk about your achievements, you talk about how you sell the achievements for the past clients, for the past jobs, and that it is your footprint on the digital world that nowadays, especially on LinkedIn, recruiters are there all the time. Next one, please. So to achieve results, as I said before, social media is hard work, okay? So if you're gonna start it right. Create a strategy, a plan, and do it every single day. Because you have to be consistent. Doesn't need to be 24/7, 7 days per week. I just generate content twice per week. So it's not, but they know, my audience, they know that I will generate content for them about digital, about marketing, about social media, about personal branding, twice a week. So they are waiting for me, which is amazing, because when I want to sell something, they are there. So it's easy for me to just reach the right people. When you have a voice, you create authority. So being an authority today in your field, it is very important. If you do not have authority, if you do not know what you're talking about, you're not gonna get your business for the next level or going for a better job and got a promotion or anything that you're gonna do in your life. Content is king. So it's what people in digital say all the time. If you do not generate content, it's like go just to Facebook, and then you have your pictures of your fancy restaurant, your fancy, travel to Caribbean or whatever. When I talk about content here, I talk about your knowledge. So generate content about your knowledge. What is my expertise? What's my talent? And then you generate articles, you generate blog, you generate video. Nowadays, videos is getting crazy. And now, especially between 20s and 35s, they consume video all the time. 8% of their engagement on social media nowadays for that specific age, generation are on video. And you have to use subtitles. So videos without subtitles is a scroll down. Nobody wants, so you have to have subtitles. And social media is like this big room. So, you meet people from everywhere, from different paths, different backgrounds, and then you find your tribe on social media. Next one, please. And then to manage this risk of you being visible on social media, that's really scary sometimes because, if someone takes a picture of you, actually I'm gonna just take a little bit here, just 30 seconds, and give an example. One of my friends, 2 weeks ago, he got a big trouble with a friend because he said that he was sick and he was in a wedding. Someone took a picture of him in the back and tagged him. So another friend that he had to cancel because he said that he was sick says, "Oh, actually you were in a wedding. I saw on Facebook." And I'm like, yeah, someone tagged you. So it's bad. Another thing that's a huge risk on social media is oversharing. Do not talk about, like if you're doing on LinkedIn, do not talk about, your problems or personal, personal issues or, marriage that's not very good. There is a place for that on LinkedIn. You use the hashtags for example, mental health, growth mindset, warrior mindset. So find the hashtag, and if you want to generate a content for that, use the hashtag because people will understand that in that moment you're not talking just about you as a product or a service. So you're being human, okay? When you reach, so when you have a community or you have people that is your audience, friends that connect with you, you act, you generate content, you engage, you like, you comment, and you engage with them. So this is the third step. That is the engagement that's super important. I generate content twice a week, but I engage every single day. I have, someone is talking about something that's really important for me. For example, mental health now. We have this big movement in London that people are talking about mental health and how important it is. For me, it's a very, very important aspect in my life because I have in my family people with mental health issues. So for me, it's a big thing. It's a big, it's a big topic for me to engage. But I use the right hashtag. Okay, so the thing again for the hashtags. And to convert, so when you are talking about your knowledge, you can convert someone that is in your audience into a client. Next one, please. And I am an economist, and I love statistics. So as an economist, I look for my clients for the return of the investment. And in social media, time is money. So for LinkedIn, that is my tool of preference, we have around 8% of the converting for B2B. So why? It's very effective because people, when they connect with you on LinkedIn, they see your picture, they see your CV, where you work, they see also your achievements, and that make them straight away understand, do I want to make business with this person or not? That's why when someone contacts you, usually you just close the deal. 79% of the B2B marketers using LinkedIn nowadays to generate leads and to generate more and more business. So because of the effectiveness of the platform, you can convert quicker and with a lot more, sometimes even to high-profile clients that is difficult when you try to do for the traditional channels like cold callings or meet them in some place and then you have to wait for 6 months for them to say, yes, come here and let's have a coffee. On LinkedIn, this doesn't exist. It's a straightforward conversation. So when you sit with someone, they want to close the deal. And 90% of the top performance sales in the world using social media as their interest and their social strategy. So the sales strategy. So social media is in our life. The next generation, the millennials, they use social media all the time. They're expecting you to be there as well. And nowadays, millennials are already 40% of the workforce. So if you would think that the millennials are not around, you're wrong. So social media has to be a part of your strategy. Next one. And now, I wanted to do an activity because I wanted to show you the power of social media and the engagement. So if you have your mobiles, please. Do you have LinkedIn or Twitter? And if you can open the LinkedIn or Twitter, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the power of hashtags, okay? So I'm gonna tell you that you can connect with everybody in this room without saying anything. And you say, are you crazy? My goodness, no, why? So right now we're gonna use the hashtag. So if you are in your social media, write anything and use I'm gonna just give an example. I'm here today having a lot of fun, hashtag the risk of you. Twitter or LinkedIn. So if you wanted to do Facebook as well, we have the page of the risk of you on Facebook as well. Use the hashtag. So you write something simple, straightforward, and use the hashtag the risk of you. What we're gonna do is, of course, you're gonna post, and then after, when we are in the other room networking, you can approach me and ask me a lot of questions. I love questions, and I love answer questions, but you're going back to your social media, and you're going to search. So you use the social media channel as a search platform. So on LinkedIn or in Twitter, in the very top of your monitor or your phone, you're gonna see search. There, you're gonna write the hashtag the risk of you, and then you're gonna say, yes, click, and when you click, you're going to see the history of the hashtag. So when you see the history of the hashtag, you're going to see the people that wrote something about the hashtag, the risk of you. And those people, you're going to connect, so you request a connection with them, and as a business etiquette, you're going to send a note telling them, Miss Costa, I was at the conference and I love what you taught me about social media, and I'd love to have you on my network. And I will say, I accept you. So now, probably I have almost 100 of new connections without having to talk with everybody. So this is the power of the social media. This is the power of hashtags. This is the power of you engaging with people that potentially they could be important for you in the future. So if you have any questions, we are going to be in the networking area after, and please just approach, ask me a lot of questions. If for any reason you did not have the opportunity to speak with me, go on my LinkedIn and ask me the questions. You know, like Candice, I didn't understand this thing of LinkedIn. What is content? How can I do that? Are you crazy? I'm working like 12 hours per day, and I have kids at home. How can I write social media every single day? And then I can tell you how I do it. And nowadays, I just work 3 days per week. I have a strategy for that, and I can teach you the strategy, okay? So I hope you had a lot of fun. If you want more information about my slides, please just ask me, can you send me your slides? And I'm happy to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Candice. That's amazing. Interesting thing is I use LinkedIn quite a bit as well, and I can confirm that I have generated businesses from LinkedIn, and it's all about positioning and putting your message out there and not being afraid. I've been to Malaysia, I've been invited back, Dubai, we got business in Dubai, also Ghana we did last year as well. So all from LinkedIn, you know, so don't be afraid to use it, and don't be afraid to put, you know, the right messages out, because it does work. So now we want to invite John. John is going to talk to us about how networking is an important aspect of any business. So you have your personal brand, you have your social media now. What do you do with all that? You got to move around and network with people, just like you're doing here right now. So John, please. A warm welcome for John, please.
Good evening, everybody. As been pointed out, my name's John Gower. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people actually go networking on a regular basis? Okay. So what my talk today is about is how to network better, get some better results from networking. For guys that have not been networking apart from this evening, networking is pretty much what you do on social media, but it's all about personal contacts. So if you want any kind of experience, what I suggest you do is go networking, because it's a fantastic way of getting business on a very regular basis and building some solid contacts. Networking isn't just about finding business, but it's also about building relationships with others that will then recommend you to their friends and family. And also, you can use networking to find some great suppliers, get some inspiration, and learn from others. So if I could have the first slide, please. Okay, so is the next one? I don't think I've seen that one. Right, so that's normally the slide I start with, so I've normally got my own little clicker. So if you've not been networking, I really suggest you do go. For those that have been networking, have any of you had any really good positive results from the networking that you've done? Hands up. Brilliant. So that's pretty much everybody then. Okay, so the next slide, please. So networking really does work in so many different ways. I've had free holidays from networking where someone's got an apartment and I've swapped my goods and services for them. And I've also had some great people give me some solid advice about my website, my advertising, my pay-per-click, my search engine optimization, my Facebook, my social media, all of these things that we all use for our business. I've got some great advice and free. So working through others is also a great way of helping your business. But it's expensive. To go networking, it is expensive. Could I have the next slide, please? There's very different ways of going networking. So tonight we've had open networking. Some of you guys have been to some business events and expos and you've seen a load of people shouting at each other in rows of chairs. That's speed networking. You also get industry-led, so you'll get construction-only networking, you'll get accountancy networking, and then you'll have some structured networking, which is where everybody gets an opportunity to present their business. They get 60 seconds to talk about what they do, the type of connections they're looking to make. If you've been networking, there's several organisations out there that you can't avoid it, and so you have to be prepared for that. Some you get 40 seconds, some you get 60 seconds, some you only get 25 seconds. There's different types of networking as well. So there's breakfast meetings. These are getting up incredibly early, but getting 2 hours of meeting people before and getting behind your desk before 10 o'clock, where most people are still arriving at that sort of time in the morning. There's lunchtime, and then there's dinner. There's various different dining ones, and there's different ones also paid for and free. So which of these things, out of these two here, do you think you get the best results from? Hands up who thinks free is the best way to go networking. And hands up paid for. Okay, so there's a bit of mixture there. So they're the different types of networking that you can go to. So could I have the next slide, please? So the first rule about networking, about anything else, and what you're going to learn here tonight about is the risk of you, is being someone that you're not. If you go networking and you be somebody who you're not, one, you're not going to get any credibility, and two, you're going to come away so stressed. So the first rule about networking is be yourself. You can't stand over here and talk Cockney and then turn around here and be ooh la la. Because you won't have any credibility with either of those two people, least alone yourself. Because you're not going to remember if you talked ooh la la or all call blimey governor here, because you're going to forget. And it's really, really stressful. And at the end of the day, you've got to understand, you're not going to please everybody. Seriously, you're not. People will eventually get you if you're persistent and you carry on being yourself, and people may get you wrong, and that's a judgment on themselves rather than you, but you've always got to be yourself when you go networking. Does that make sense, guys? Brilliant. Next slide, please. Be clear about what you are there to do, okay? If you are there to build relationships and friendships, take your time. If you're there about doing business, tell people that's what you are there to do. There is absolutely no winning in trying to go there and be vague. You've got to be precise about what you want from your networking. I go networking to find business. I do not need any more friends. I've got lots of them. I'm going to have a few more, and I'm going to use a few hashtags. But seriously, I'm there for business. I am absolutely clear when people meet me what I do for a living and what I'm looking for and the type of people I'm looking to connect with. And I'll tell you why I do that is because not every single person in that room is going to be your client, but they know someone who is. And if you're yourself and you're clear about what you do, these people will either like or dislike you, and the ones that like you are going to recommend you. Even if that's only 50% of the people that you meet, you're going to get people who like you, understand what you do, and give you referrals. And that's how you get business through networking. Next slide, please. I'm actually quite nervous. I've done this 100 times in front of more people, but tonight just seems a little bit more personal. I don't know if anyone else feels that. So, rule number 3, okay? There's only 6 rules, so I'm not going to bore you guys to death. Rule number 3. Has everybody heard of the expression, one hand washes the other? My granny gave me that, and I've lived my entire life, even going through school and being bullied and being moved from school every 2 years, not getting arrested, but... yeah, well, the night's early. I'll see you in the back for Jaegers. No, but one hand washes the other. That's basically, if I do something for you, you are more than likely to do the same thing for me. Not immediately, but over time. So if I have a conversation with someone and I say, you should do this, and they remember that, then they're likely to come back to me for more advice. And if what they do I find interesting for my business, I'm going to pick their brains as well. And it's a win-win. So that's learning through others. But also, more importantly, if I give you a referral and you get business from it, are you more than likely now to start looking for business for me? Normally that's a yes. Eventually. If you get the opportunity, I've just given you a big client, and I say to you, I'm looking for that type of person, I'm pretty sure within 6 months, you'll introduce me to that person I'm looking for. Whether it's a monetary gain or something to improve my business, you'll find someone for me. And that's generally how that's worked. And that's called referrals. Okay? When you get a referral, always be favoured, remember, say thank you, and give something back. If you apply these simple rules, your networking will improve enormously. I've got a case here. I gave a guy in Richmond, we're from the sort of local neck of woods, I gave a referral to a guy in Richmond, and that referral turned out to be £50,000 worth of work. It was a very simple thing for me to do. I've got a great big database. A lot of people have got a Just Ask John policy from when they meet me. But, gave the referral to this chap. When I went to see him, and I said, oh, so how did you get on with that contact? Not spoken to him for 6 months since. I said, how did you get on? He went, oh yeah, fantastic. Brilliant, brilliant referral. And I'm waiting. What do you think I was waiting for? Thank you. Did he say it? No. So then I said to him, why don't you advertise in my magazine that I own and run? It's going to cost you £1,000 a year. He said, nah, it's not my kind of audience, not the type of people I want to attract. It's just not for me. 2 times the guy's offended me. How many times do you think I've given him any more referrals? 0. Next slide, please. Okay, this is one of my favourites, and I've got a cracking story on this one, but this one is fantastic because this has literally happened to me, not with Richard Branson, but with a very good client of mine. Always be polite to the person you sit next to on the bus. Do you understand that rule? Yeah? Well, I was at a networking event in a place called Cobham in Surrey, and we did this networking thing around the table, 60 seconds, and this lady burst in halfway through the meeting, dumped her money in the middle of the table, which is only £12, sat down in the empty chair that was reserved for her. 60 seconds came round, stopped, the entire room went silent, and she was hashtagging probably, laughing at some jokes on Facebook, scribbling down some notes, and she stood up and she went, oh, is it my turn? I said, yeah, your turn, thank you very much. Sorry you're late, get yourself settled in, but if you tell us what you're doing, the type of people you're looking for. She said immediately, without listening to anyone, all of you people in this room are below me. You're not the type of clients I'm looking for. As soon as this is finished, I can't wait to get out of here. Now, I'm making it sound drastic, but it wasn't quite like that, but that's the way it read to us. So it came round in another 260 seconds. She got up and she left immediately, before even breakfast was served. So I followed her and I said, look, what happened? Did someone touch your leg under the table? Did anyone swear at you? What happened here? She just said, no, the people in that room, they're just not the type of people I can do business with. And I said, oh. Did you speak to the person you sat next to? She said, oh, no, I hadn't got time for that. I'm far too busy. I said, okay. I said, well, if you'd have spoken to him, last year he got married. And she said, I am not interested. We've done our wedding stuff. We're way past that. You're far too behind. This is exactly why networking doesn't work for me. And I said, well, if you'd let me finish the sentence, you'd have realised he got married last year and his best man at his wedding was Theopathetus. Is this person still beneath you? She replied, oh, I must get his phone number. That's exactly what happened, and I can promise you that is a true story. So you always be polite to sit next to you on the person on the bus. Would you do business with this person here? Despite what he looks like? If you imagine you sit next to this person on a bus, would you call him an idiot while he's got his hat on? Most likely. But when you get off the bus and he goes, it's me, would you be regretful for that? Absolutely. Because you just don't know who knows who. So always be polite to the person that you genuinely don't know. Wait until you get to know them and then be rude to them. Isn't that right, Ches? So always be polite to the person sitting next to you on the bus. My personal experience is I was a consultant about 4 years ago, coming back from a rugby match, covered in Guinness, carpet wrapped around me, sitting on first class, the train wasn't going anywhere. I literally sat down next to someone, struck up a conversation, apologised way in advance for being smelly, drunk, covered in Guinness, and we got chatting to the guy. And at the time, my client was in construction. And when I got chatting to this guy, I was being myself, having a laugh, talking about the rugby, general stuff you do when you're trying to avoid getting rude and obnoxious when you've had too many Guinnesses. And we swapped business cards. When I got home, he was the CEO of Cushman & Wakefield. Does anybody know who they are? The biggest constructor in Europe. He was the CEO and Vice President for UK and Ireland operations. Literally sitting next to me being all apologetic, stinking a Guinness. 5 weeks later, my client got a £5 million tender from that person. Just because I was being myself, I knew what I was talking about, and I was polite to the person I sit next to on the bus. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, you've got networking, you're being polite, you've got a stack of cards. What do you do with them? Most people leave them on the edge of their desk. Or they put them in a nice little box, in a little drawer, and go, I'll get round to that. Yeah? That's the worst thing you can do, because there's no point in going networking. Seriously, there is no point in going. Because I said earlier on it was expensive to go networking, right? If you charge £50 an hour for your labour, okay, you go to a 2-hour networking event, your travel time in, your time there, your travel time out, the cost if you pay a fee to go to that meeting, your membership, you're looking at about £200 or more. Now, if you had a boss on a Friday and go, £200, and you get those expenses back, how many times do you think that chit is going to be signed off? Yeah, you can have that 200 quid, yeah, you can have that 200 quid, yeah, you can have that 200 quid. Eventually, some point at somewhere, it's going to say, where's the results? But I've got a stack of cards on the corner of my desk. No, it doesn't work. So what I suggest you always do is keep your data, okay? If you just keep it on a simple spreadsheet, keep your data, okay? Those cards will be useless in 3 months' time because you're not going to remember the conversations that you have with that person. So if you put it on a simple spreadsheet, you can have a little notes at the end of here saying, spoke to Charlie, lady, in brackets, pink dress, sunshine outside, drinking pink cocktails, conversation was. Yeah? Because you're going to remember that conversation, you're going to remember that time that you were there, visually in your mind you're going to recall that conversation, and it can almost pinpoint almost everything that you talked about, even if it is 3 months later, because you've kept the data on that conversation. How amazing would it be when you ring up Charlie and say, hey Charlie, how did you get on with your holiday, even though it's 3 months later? Is your boss still being an arse? You're going to get that conversation, and that is all about one of the biggest things that people forget about networking is relationship building. If you don't keep the data and you don't know who you're talking to, you can't build a relationship with them. All the other stuff is really nice. People will walk away going, oh, that was a nice person. But if you then call them 3 months later and recall a conversation and say, are you going to the next event? Yes, I'll look out for you. Are they likely to do business with you or go and Google what you do for a living? They're going to come and talk to you first. So always keep data. Next slide is follow up. How many people do everything I've talked about, put it on a spreadsheet and say, yeah, I'll call you next week. I'll send you an email. Yeah, let's hook up on LinkedIn. And never do. 3 weeks later, that person might have the best client you're ever going to ever have sitting there waiting for you to make that call, waiting for you to follow up on an email, waiting for the LinkedIn link thing, whatever they call it. I'm still a bit nervous. So follow-up, it still surprises me how many people don't do that. You're leaving business behind if you're not following up. And always do what you say you're going to do. Okay? If you say you're going to call on Monday, put it in your diary and call on Monday. If you say you're going to send an email, send an email. But one of the nicest things you can do with a follow-up is, I'm just following up our conversation, but I've seen this. I thought you might find it interesting. How fantastic is that if you're giving someone a link or a tip or something that's in their industry that you've seen and you've sent it to them? You're doing what you said you're going to do and some. So you're going back to the other rule of, I've just done something for you. I want you to do something for me without asking for it. I hope that makes sense. and I hope I'm not talking too quickly. The next slide, please. So, my name's John Gower. I run the fastest growing network in the UK. I help people do better at networking on one-to-one basis. I'm not a public speaker, as it's quite evident. Face for radio and all of that. We've got 2 groups in London. I've got a group meeting tomorrow, which is more of a social event at Devonshire House in Liverpool Street. And on the 15th of October, we've also got an event on Embankment. But we also have groups all over the southeast. In just 18 months, we've attracted over 350 members and done over £73 million worth of referrals. Anybody that's taken any attention to what I've just said there and applies those rules, says that networking doesn't work, they need locking up. Because it does work. It's one of the best ways of generating leads, albeit sometimes on a slow burn, depending on what you niche in, but you're building relationships. And when you build solid, good, strong relationships through networking, the business will follow. Don't go into a room snatching cards, expecting people to buy from you because they're going to be your ideal client. That does not exist. You might as well go door to door selling vacuum cleaners because it ain't going to work for you. So, next slide, please. Thank you very much for listening. Start clapping now!
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Yeah. Oh, any questions for John, please? There must be a question for John, definitely.
Thank you.
Say you meet someone, like a card, send an email.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you said in the first place and how you're going to contact them.
Okay, say you've met someone and you've sent them an email, maybe.
It depends on the permission that they've asked for in the first. If you said, look, I'm going to send you an email next week, and you send that email and they don't respond, give them a call.
Give them a call.
Because, look, this GDPR stuff, right, a lot of people are paranoid about it. If someone's giving you their business card, that's enough permission that you need. You have a genuine business interest to talk to that person on whatever platform you feel is appropriate. You don't need signed contracts for someone to say, send an email. What you can't do, and what's probably inappropriate, and I would avoid at all costs, is spam emailing, mass emailing, unless people have asked to be part of that process, if that makes sense. But I would always follow up. There's nothing better than picking up the phone. It's more personal. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Do you get a whiff of understanding about whether someone's going to be a genuine lead or not through your experiences? Or because you know sometimes you're generating leads with someone and you're talking to them trying to develop business and you might be going for months and months and you can't tell whether they're genuine or what exactly is going on or what the barrier might be to
Trust your
business.
gut. Trust your gut. The amount of times that I follow up hopefuls, yeah, let's do some business, and it's 3 months later and we're still bouncing emails between each other, I would just get blunt and say, look, I don't want to waste any of your time. Let's do this one last chance. Let's go for a coffee and decide if we can do business or not. If not, no worries. I still know what you do, and I'm still happy to recommend your services. But, you know, I don't want to be hounding. I don't want to be doing that. Is there a chance? Can we all cut for a coffee? If not, I'll keep your card and I'll try and find a referral wherever I can. Take the opposite, almost like a passive-aggressive sort of approach. But be yourself again, you know, but ask the direct question. Stop mucking about. Because they're either going to buy your services because they really like you and they want to do business with you, or they're not. Does that make sense? Yeah? Any other questions? That's more of a salesy sort of question, though. I don't think it's a networky sort of thing, but I get where you're coming from. The amount of time, yes. Well, I was just talking just now, 20 minutes. So you get yourself on a train for 20 minutes, you spend £100 on a ticket going into London, and then all of a sudden, I can't make it, I'm sick. No, you're not, you're a bloody wedding. I've just seen you on Facebook. Any other questions? Please feel free to come and have a chat with me afterwards if you just feel a little bit uncomfortable asking questions. I'm going to hang around for a little while. It's an open bar, isn't it? Guinness? Great. Thank you very much. Cheers. This is difficult, by the way.
Networking works. Without wasting any further time, we want to get Augusta up on the stage. I know there are some people in here who want to start a business, and sometimes money is an issue, or it's a concern, or it's a worry. Augusta is going to tell us about how we can make money work for us better. Augusta, please.
Hello, everyone. Okay, you've all been sitting down a long time, so stand up. Everyone, stand up. Stand up. Everyone, stand up, stand up. Shake it off. Shake it off, come on. Let's wake up. Okay, guys, look, I've got 20 minutes, and if you start the thing rolling, I've got a lot to get through in that time. So I want you to stay with me. I want you to be engaged. You don't have the adrenaline that I do running all the way through me. But you can take a seat now, and we're going to get to it. Oh, that's a nice page. Thank you, that. Money, ways to make it work for you. So, because I've got quite a lot of fancy slides, did you change it in the sense that, okay, fine. We'll just run with it and see how it goes. Okay, so I say we're covering a lot of stuff today. I'll talk a little bit about myself because I think it's important when someone's on the front of the stage to explain why I think I have the credibility to stand in front of you. We're going to talk about the world right now, create some context with the world, with money, and then we're going to go into the different groups, the mortgages, protection, pensions and investments, a little bit about business, and then we're going to close. Now, there might not be any time for questions at the end, so if you want to catch me, please do once we finish the event. That's right. Great. Okay, so my name is Augusta. I'm a partner at an award-winning advisory firm called Foster de Novo. We offer a range of financial planning solutions, but my particular specialism is property finance. So although I'm a fully qualified financial planner, what I really help people do is create wealth through property. My advisory firm is, one of the key things we focus on is something called cash flow management, which essentially is ensuring that our clients never run out of money. That's the aim in what we do. Myself, if you care about qualifications, I have those coming out my ears. Taken a lot of exams over the course of my life. I am as well as being a property finance specialist, a mortgage advisor, I also have a serviced accommodation business, which I run with my partner, Nicholas. Wherever he's gone, there he is. I am a property developer. Here's a couple of the projects that we've worked on. Been featured in the Financial Times, prolific on social media, and last week I won Mortgage Advisor of the Year at the Women's Recognition Awards. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I have a channel called The New Face of Finance, in case you like to watch me on YouTube. Next. Okay. Right, okay, so let's talk about the context that we're working in. To Brexit or not to Brexit, that is the question. Obviously, that's causing a lot of confusion, along with this guy here who believes he's the best American president we've ever had. And the biggest impact of these two things is uncertainty. And uncertainty, the effect it's having on the British economy right now, is that nobody really wants to buy anything, spend any money, do anything. We're kind of sitting still until March the 26th or 29th, or wherever it is, when the deal will be announced. And we're getting a bit nervous right now. Now, I've probably seen this impact really, start to slow down August, September of this year, with people wanting to do less and less business. Doesn't affect me too much because most of my clients are buy-to-let investors, and so we've got to make money come rain or shine. But the residential market, and the news will tell you, it's slowing down quite a lot, and this is about this uncertainty. Now, personally, again, in relation to risk, I like uncertainty. I like this Warren Buffett speech where he came up with this concept, when people are fearful, be greedy. When people are greedy, be fearful. And I live by that concept. So in this period of uncertainty, especially from a property investor's perspective, I think this is a really good time to go look at the opportunities out there when you don't have that much competition, when everyone's sitting on their hands waiting to see what's going to happen. Interest rates and inflation. We've just seen a slight increase in interest rates. We've had this flat 0.5% for about 8-9 years. And all of a sudden, they've increased it to 0.75%. Everyone's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? 0.75% increase, okay? Now, the people who are really being affected by this are people who have had the fortunate position of finding themselves on lifetime tracker products. And they, about 10 years ago, would have seen a reduction in rates from about 5.5%, all the way down to this 0.5% or maybe 1.5%, but basically tracking the base rate. Now, inflation is on the rise. And the reason interest rates are rising is because of this inflation. But obviously, this forms part of the background that we're talking about. And the other thing that is impacting the world we live in today heavily is social media. And obviously, there was a time when we got most of our news from newspapers or from Fox or from, very established parts of the media. And now, all sorts of people are creating news and putting out there, and it's influencing our mindsets, which is creating a bit of a scattergun approach. Everyone has very different views about very different subjects, and anybody can put their opinion out there. Okay, so how is that impacting what we do? First of all, I'm going to talk about it from the mortgages perspective, and I say incredibly passionate about what I do on a day-to-day basis. But just because all this stuff is going on, you shouldn't neglect your personal wealth creation, your personal development. And one thing this links to is mortgages. And I tell you what, I really like what Linda said earlier, because I'm very much of the same mindset. I'm more likely to regret the things I didn't do than the things I did do. And the amount of people, I have a lot of meetings, and the amount of people that sit in front of me in their 40s, 50s, 60s and say, oh, I had the opportunity to buy a house, but I didn't. Now I wish I did. And they're scrambling to get on. Look, I'm not saying run out there and buy a house. Obviously, get good advice, make sure it's right for you. But I genuinely believe, standing here in front of you today, that if you don't invest in property, you're more likely to regret it than not. That's my general view, okay? So why? What's so good about property? All right, first of all, you don't have to find all the money for a house, hence mortgages. Mortgages do something called leverage, which basically make your money work harder for you. So, if you get a residential mortgage, you can put down a 10% deposit, you borrow 90% from the bank, subject to your income obviously stacking up. So your 10% deposit over time is going to, the value of the house is going to increase, and therefore the money is going to work harder for you. This is known as increase in equity or capital appreciation, which will happen over time. And obviously what's going to happen as well, if you're really worried about the risk of a mortgage, most residential mortgages in the UK today are written on a capital repayment basis, so you've got to pay them down anyway. You're going to be paying that debt down over the next 25 or 30 years. And you think, oh my God, 30-year commitment? Well, otherwise you'd be paying rent for that time. So you might as well own something. So this creation of equity over the long term, and what's really great about equity as well is once you've grown that equity, so I've got people, for example, that bought houses 20 years ago, they're now getting a bit older, their kids are in their 20s and 30s, and they're thinking, okay, how do I pass on this wealth in an efficient way possible? And there are lenders out there who will allow parents or older members of the family to pass on equity to their children. Yeah, okay, you still kind of got to pay stamp duty, and stamp duty is a bit of a pain in the butt, but if it's your first property, no stamp duty on the first £300,000 purchase. But they can pass the equity on, so the child can purchase the property for the value of the mortgage, subject to their income stacking up. So that's great, that's amazing. Owning property gives you a certain level of certainty and security. Again, it helps, as we mentioned, helps to create wealth, and if you are a buy-to-let investor, rental income also gives you a little bit of a nest egg as well, a little bit of money. Now, what are the risks? What are the main risks associated with mortgages? Probably credit risk. So obviously, it's really important you try and take care of your credit. Try not to miss your mortgage payments. If you do, it's not the end of the world. It just means that if you try and remortgage at a certain period of time, your rates might be higher. If you just make it a priority to keep on top of your mortgage and pay those, it's not too bad a risk. It's just like keeping paying your rent. Default risk, that's really more of a lender thing, yes. You can take a mortgage out with Halifax and they can go down, but the risks are quite minimal. I'm not saying it won't happen, but the risks are relatively minimal. The UK has all sorts of schemes in place to prevent this kind of thing. As far as I've seen over the last 10 years, the UK is the kind of country that tries to avoid financial institutions failing. They really have to be in the poo to go down. And obviously interest rates can rise, so you can start off with a quite low interest rate, and then over time it will start to go up, which you're probably going to see over the next few years. But you can mitigate that by fixing for 5 years, for 10 years, so there's certainty of payment over the long run. And then obviously there's repossession risk. But repossession risk can be avoided if you just pay your bleeding mortgage. Do you know what I mean? So, thank you very much. Move on to the next stage. All right, protection. Do you know, I wish you kept the slide had you kept it before, because it would have made a bit more sense. Right, let's talk about what people tend to insure. Now, when you buy a house, you generally have to insure it, home insurance. That's usually a legal obligation. The lender probably won't even let you complete unless there is some home insurance attached to the house. Insure our cars, again, that's legal. We have to legally insure our cars if we own them. Mobile phones, drop them down the toilet, lose them on holiday, get pissed, drop them in a pint, we insure our phones. Pets, this country loves pets, don't we? More people have pet insurance than life insurance in the UK, believe it or not. It's nuts, right? But people neglect insuring themselves. Probably the most important asset is you. But we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about getting sick, and we don't want to talk about dying, even though none of us are bleeding immortal. You know, it's something that we should really consider. So let's talk briefly about the kinds of protection you consider. Firstly, income protection. Income protection basically is a policy that ensures that if you can't work, and it doesn't have to be for something necessarily quite serious, it could be for, you know, stress at work, you're feeling a bit depressed over a long period of time, it will pay out. It'll give you a salary, represents probably 65% of your gross salary. Obviously, they can't give you 100%, or else why go to work? You might as well just be sick. But 65% of your gross salary, and that's paid out to you for a certain period of time. Often it's written to a retirement age, which was 65 after a point. Obviously, it's a lot longer now, but most lenders will stop about 65. Lump sum on death to clear your mortgage, assuming you have a mortgage. And it doesn't have to be to clear your mortgage, it could just be a lump sum on death to provide for your family. It can cover any outstanding debts, it help your children, if you have some, finish school and university and so on, but you don't benefit from it, your loved ones do. And lastly, disability, critical illness. And this is quite an important one. No one ever wants to pay for it. But have you noticed that there's a lot more ambulances than there are hearses? See, a lot more ambulances than hearses. So you're more likely to get critically ill than you are, well, you're going to die anyway, but you're more likely to get critically ill first. Do you know what I mean? So nobody wants to talk about this stuff, but think about it. It's really important you think about this stuff. You always think you don't need it till you need it, then you're like, crap. Okay? Can I see the next slide? Thank you. Now, these were really fancy slides before. But it's really important I point this out to you, just because nobody, again, wants to talk about inheritance planning, yeah? And you're also thinking I'm quite morbid. I'm not. I'm just realistic, okay? The reality is, you know, probably the average one-bed flat in Zone 1 or Zone 2 is about £450,000 in London, yeah? We have something in the UK, it's called a nil rate band. The Queen has it, I have it, you have it, everybody has a nil rate band. And what that nil rate band means, that in the event of your death, the first £325,000 can be passed to your family members tax-free, but anything above that 325 attracts 40% inheritance tax. Yeah? So in that regard, you know, it's really important, especially if you own property in London, it's very likely that in the event of your death, if you own an asset in London, it's going to be worth more than £325,000, that you are putting some kind of planning in place and you're thinking about the long-term impact of this. Now, if it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to you. You know? It's not a big deal. Some people are like, oh, I believe in paying tax. It's there for a reason. It's there for people who can't, you know, afford to have a good life and so on and so on. But most people I speak to are like, what? I need to get this sorted out. So again, it's something that I think we need to consider and mitigate. Now the next slide. Thank you. Right, pensions and investments. Now, if I'm honest with you, although I'm a fully qualified financial planner, when I think about these two words, I do feel a little bit like going to sleep. And that's really bad because, to be honest, they are as important, probably, you know, as mortgages. The thing with mortgages are kind of like the start of wealth creation. It's usually people's first entry into thinking about their finances. Oh, I want to buy a house. And then once you own a house, then you start thinking about all these other elements. But I do think it's important to talk about this just because, as well, it's really important to have a diversified portfolio, a portfolio that contains all sorts of elements so that you weather the storm, so that you weather any set of circumstances that you might find yourself in. So there's a few things that I want to address today. The first one in relation to pensions is tax relief. Now, not everyone knows this, but I'm going to read the sentence. You can get tax relief on private pension contributions worth up to 100% of your annual earnings. And that is from the government website, gov.uk. So this basically means that if you earn £40,000 and you put £40,000, your whole salary, into your pension, that you can get tax relief on that full £40,000. Yeah? So this is obviously very tax efficient. There aren't many things that you can invest in and, you know, you are relieved of taxed in that instance. So it's something to think of. And I'm not saying, obviously, earn all your money and put it in your pension. You know? We all want to have a life. We want to go on holiday. But it's really important to know that in the UK, planning for your future is something that's very important, and in fact, something that's quite tax efficient. So if there is this opportunity at work, and assuming, of course, you're employed, if you're self-employed like me, doesn't count, got to find other ways to think about your retirement. But if you are employed and your employer is there, you know, offering you some kind of contribution, so they're willing to contribute towards your pension, bite their hands off. Might as well. It's free money. Yeah? Self-invested personal pension schemes, otherwise known as SIPs. SIPs are generally, I'm going to read this bit to you. A self-invested personal pension, SIP, is the name given to the type of UK government-approved personal pension scheme which allows individuals to make their own investment decisions from a full range of investment approved by HMRC. So basically, a SIP is a pension that you control. Obviously, you're governed by UK rules as to what you can put your money in, you know, the kind of things you can invest in, but it's actually a bigger and bigger pool, which gives you a bit of flexibility in terms of how you save your money, your tax-efficient money, for the long run. Compounding. This relates to both pensions and investment. Let me read you the definition of compounding. Compounding is the ability of an asset to generate earnings, which are then reinvested in order to generate their own earnings. In other words, compounding refers to generating earnings from previous earnings. Your money working for your money. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like having babies, and then the babies have babies, and everyone's making you money. You know, your pounds having pounds that work for you. That is the effect of compounding. So what they're basically saying in this little bit here is, if you stick your money in a pension fund or an investment fund and you don't touch it, and if dividends are paid out, or you know the pot that you invested is now worth more, you don't touch that money, you allow it to grow again, the effect on that is exponential. Okay? We're going to talk about this in a moment, but tax is one of the biggest eroders of wealth, and you constantly moving in and out of funds is incredibly tax efficient and is one of the reasons why people erode their wealth. But if you leave it and you just let it grow and grow and grow, you experience the effect of compounding, which effectively makes you wealthier on the long run. Staged investments, or pound cost averaging. It's really important to point this out, because a lot of people think, right, if I have 30k, I'm just going to dump in investment. It's actually better to put £10 a week in than it is to just go dump 30k in there. The reason being, pound cost averaging is a technique that reduces exposure to failing markets from investing a lump sum. By investing at regular intervals, more shares are purchased when share prices are low, and fewer shares are purchased when prices are high. The investor will be better off in falling markets. So pound cost averaging basically means that if you are saving regularly, then you kind of weather the up and down of the market, your returns are smoother, and it works better for you. Money works harder for you in the long run. And lastly, what I'm going to talk about here is equity performance, or even outperformance for that matter. Now, I'm not sure the stat is there, but I remember when I started off in investment banking about, 12 years ago, whatever it is now, 15 years ago. God, how old am I? Yeah, about that. I remember that a lot of our bosses would make this point that the equity markets outperformed every asset class over a 20-year period. Now, I tried to look for that quote on the internet, but it seems to have disappeared. Instead, I found this. For most of the past century, anyone investing for a 30-year period has been rewarded with a return in excess of inflation of between 4% and 8% a year if they were sensible about reinvesting the dividend income from their holdings. And that's some finance guy from the Telegraph, yeah? So he's gone and done a little study, and he's found that over the last 100 years, over a 30-year period, which is reflective of the general investment horizon, most of us, or most humans, that if you kept your money invested in one pot, you don't have to keep moving it around, you beat inflation consistently between 4 and 8% over that period. Okay? So it's brilliant if you have this thing that earns you 5% per year, but if inflation is 3%, then it's 2%. If you had a return that made you 3% and inflation is 4%, your money's being eroded. Yeah? So what it says here is actually, it's a good idea to keep your money in a pot, any pot, well, within reason. Usually an index-linked asset is good enough, something that just follows the FTSE 100 or FTSE 250. You generally will find that you're wealthier over the long run, over a 30-year period. Right, now we're talking about business, and I absolutely love business. I was kind of employed. I've always struggled with employment. I've always been really bad at being employed. So I've always kind of teetered on self-employment, but now I'm proper fully in self-employment. In fact, I call myself a property entrepreneur. Yes, I have 3 businesses and growing, and they say what you need. It's an average of most millionaires have like 5 income sources or something, so I'm well on my way, right? But anyway, so what is great about business? First thing, time freedom. You decide what time you wake up, you decide what time you go to bed, which suits me because at 9 a.m. I'm usually in bed, and at 2 a.m. I'm usually working. So business suits me. The fun of strategic planning. I love strategic planning. I love thinking, what could I do over the next 5 years? And I think there's this quote. They say most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. And I feel like once you get into business, you all of a sudden develop this long-term horizon because that first 1, 2, 3 years are bloody tough. So you have to think about, okay, look, I only got to see light at the end of the tunnel. And realistically, this starts to happen after your 3rd, 4th, 5th years and so on. It's very much a long-term thing, like property. Personal, professional development. You have personal responsibility. In the mornings, I know that my PA is going to call me and say, what am I doing today? I've got to be ready. I've got to know what the priorities of the business are, and I've got to be able to tell her so that she can go on and talk to my administrator and make sure the stuff gets done every day to grow the business, to get them paid. So all of a sudden, you learn how to be, responsible for you, yourself, your time, the decisions you make, but you also learn how to be responsible for others and their professional development and their growth. You find that to be important as well. So way to mitigate tax. I mentioned earlier that tax is one of the biggest eroders of wealth. Yeah? And so when you're self-employed, I find, I focus on generating as much turnover as possible, but at the same time, I spend a lot of time reinvesting that turnover into developing my staff, developing myself, developing my businesses. And so through that constant reinvestment, I avoid paying tax and therefore avoid eroding the wealth that we're creating. And then obviously, of course, business expenses and everything. You can make everything a business expense if you work hard enough. And I take a lot of holidays that are paid for by my companies and so on. So I think that covers everything in a nutshell. To summarize, I think it's definitely worth investing in your financial education. And whatever you feel to be an investment is whatever you feel to be an investment. But whether it's taking time out to listen to podcasts, to listen to the right shows, to attend events like this, or paying hundreds or thousands of pounds to go to Tony Robbins events or whatever it is worth investing in you and your financial education for the long term. And I also think it's worth planning ahead and being prepared. I think you're more likely to succeed and achieve the goals that you want to if you're able to do that. I thank you for listening, and if there's any questions, I can take 1 or 2, or run out of time. 1. Yes. Okay. I love this question. I love this question. So who's they to start with? Who's they? Who said this? Was it on the radio? Okay. First of all, be careful about who you listen to. A lot of people talk rubbish, yeah? Secondly, okay, so let's take this example. They're saying, oh, there's going to be a property crash. And now you get a property, you sell your house at a loss because everyone's running riot now, so you're not going to get market value. So you sell it, and you sell it £50,000 less than it's worth, and then you take that money and what, you're going to go, what, leave it in a bank? So now you leave it in a bank, you're still suffering inflation, your money's been eroded by inflation. You are better off holding on to that property, let people run wild, and then if you're going to sell it when the market is high. You understand? Yeah? So I just think you've got to be careful who you listen to. And I think there's this herd mentality that happens, and it's universal. It's not just to the UK, but I feel like it does, unfortunately, erode people's wealth. Bad advice and the avoidance of sound market principles is a wealth eroder. So just be careful about where you get your advice from. Yeah? Ooh. Yeah? If you're buying a residential house, whether you own no houses or 20 houses, it's pretty standard to be able to get 10%. Obviously, that is subject to your income stacking up. So if you're going to get a 10% deposit, obviously you have to get a 90% mortgage. So the lending is satisfied that your income, once multiplied by usual 5 times your income, will support that 90% loan. And if it does, they will give you a 90% loan to value mortgage with a 10% deposit. I do it all the time, so I know it's for real. Hey. We can definitely connect after, yeah? Thanks, Chiz.
Thank you very much. Well, that was amazing. Thank you very much, Augusta. I think this is one of the... I enjoy this slide, this presentation, because I'm also a business person as well. And I know that by running your own business, you can save, or you can create a lot of wealth and revenue for yourself. And you use the term tax avoidance. It's not tax avoidance. I hope there's no HMRC person in here today. Yeah, but you know what it means. So you can pretty much, reduce the amount of tax you pay when you run your own business as opposed to being an employee. So we got 2 more to go. Quick 5-minute break. Or do you want to carry on? 5-minute break? Show of hands, 5-minute break? Yeah, 5 minutes break, please.